Number 10 in the office or staff meeting is the office or personal issues. And this is where we open the doors, and it is unbelievably important to always open the doors for venting and issues. But in addition to that, we want to cover, what's going on with vacation schedules, holidays. Are we going to be closed early? Are we going to be off that day? This is for communication. This is like an open-ended communication. Now, one thing I want to point out in this category is the legal pad solutions. And this was a management step that I did that's highly recommended. And what happens is, what we do is, staff members a lot of times will have questions throughout the day. Stuff happens. And they'll turn to the other staff member. Well, here's what happens when you do that. Now that staff member is not paying attention to their business or to the patient sitting right in front of them or standing right in front of them. And that's very bad service. Or, and this happens a lot in offices I visited, the staff member has to get up, stop what they're doing, run to the back, and say to the doctor, ask the doctor for the solution. And a common one in that scenario that I just gave is, "Doctor, when do you want to see Mary again?" That should never happen in an office. That's terrible service and terrible systems and no training is what that is. So this helps to clear things up. Now, the legal pad solutions, here, how that works is it eliminates people wasting each other's time and helps to identify problems and solutions. And so here's how it works, is my staff was not allowed to interrupt me. Because you got to remember, I'm supposed to be seeing patients. I'm not supposed to be talking to the front desk at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So they were given yellow legal pads. Every station, every staff member should have a yellow legal pad at their station. And it's for one purpose. It's to write down the problem. Now, when you don't do this, you're going to be stopped 50 times a day. And it's terrible service and terrible efficiencies. And not only that, you won't even identify the problem, so you'll be stopped another 50 times the next day because it wasn't solved. There wasn't a system in place. This is what stops that from happening. As an example, I would show up in the morning. I'd come in the back. I'd just walk through and treat patients. Wouldn't even see my staff. I'd be done by, say, 10:30, 11. And then I'd walk up to the front desk and see my staff and say hi. And then I'd just check a few things before they started to lunch. Come back from lunch. Typically, I may or may not see them. And then I'm seeing patients. And then I typically won't see my staff until the end of the day. And I shouldn't see my staff because of the systems and the communication in place. So on occasion, there would be one or two or this or that. But the more times you're seeing the staff, the less training you have, the less efficient your systems are, and the more bad service you're giving. But the typical day is when everybody can do their jobs without interrupting anybody else. That's what systems are about, creating high efficiencies. And so the yellow pads, the legal pad solution is, you tell the staff members, all solutions, all problems are to be written down. Now, you're also to give 2 solutions. Because if you haven't noticed, it's real easy to just not even think and just make somebody else think for you. It's just kind of, that's a human thing. We all would rather have somebody else do something for us. That's just the laws of thermodynamics. So that's now to stop that from happening, in other words, from staff members constantly eating up your time with trying to solve just all the different problems that happen throughout the day, is you have them write down the problem, and then they have to come up with 2 solutions to that problem. And, by the way, there's over an 80% chance that their solution is the answer because they're right in the middle of that problem. They have other circumstances relative to that problem that you may not even be thinking about. or be aware of. So I can't tell you how many times this really empowers the staff, and it helps to create a lot of solutions, but it helps to eliminate a lot of problems. In other words, they're not allowed to just interrupt me. Staff members need to know that they cannot just interrupt me, because I have to do a job. I'm trying to see patients. So I can't just be stopped at every whim. So the only reason that they are allowed to stop me is if there's an emergency. And I'm not talking about if the if the building's on fire, kind of an emergency. I'm talking an emergency with the patient, like if there's a need issue, or if there's a time or money issue. Somebody's stopping to come in and they can't handle it, or there's a money issue and they can't handle it, or if there's no perceived need and they can't handle it. So it gets back to the core of a business, the patient's perceived need relative to their obstacles of time or money or trust. So anytime any one of those issues pop up and the staff member cannot handle it, that's defined as an emergency, because you're going to lose that patient. You're going to get fired, and it's going to happen quick. Well, that's when I do want to be notified by the patient, by my staff, so I can help prevent that from happening. So the only time the staff member is allowed to interrupt me through the day is when there's an emergency with one of those categories. Outside of that, it's not an emergency. And they write it down on the yellow legal pad, and then when they write it down, they're supposed to give 2 solutions. Well, at every staff meeting, you're going to cover, like in topic 10 here, office or personal issues, you're going to cover the legal issues, or not the legal pad solutions. And this is when they give you all the different problems that they've ran across through in the week, and they give you the solutions. In other words, you never want somebody just dumping problems on you. If you allow staff, and by the way, it's the same with staff. If one staff member allows another staff member to dump problems on them, it's the same thing. They don't like it. So to prevent, and by the way, it'll keep going. They'll keep dumping problems on you as long as you keep letting them do it. That's just human nature. So how to prevent this from happening is the legal pad solution, where they're required to, number one, not just get up and interrupt you. Number two, they only interrupt you if it's an emergency and there's a patient that's being affected with need, obstacles of time or money or trust issue that they can't handle. And then, they come up with a solution. And then at the staff meeting, they bring up everything they've written down that week. Now, some amazing things happen. This little technique, some amazing thing happens. Let me share with you some amazing things that happen. Number one is when you introduce the system, they won't go by it. They'll still interrupt you. And here's what will happen. If you let them interrupt you and you answer it, it won't even be a system anymore. It's like you said nothing. So when you implement this rule, they're still going to interrupt you. And what you have to now remember to say is, wait a minute, is that an emergency? And by the way, this is exactly what I said to my staff when they did it. Is that an emergency? No. Well, what is the system when it's a non-emergency and you have a question? Is it to interrupt me and stop me from doing what I'm doing? Is that the system? No, it's to write it down. So in other words, just because you put it in doesn't mean they're going to follow it. In other words, you're going to have to catch them 2 or 3 times. They're still going to come at you and try to steal your time. And you just got to put them on hold and go, no, wait a minute. I'm not answering that. And then typically that's what I say. I go, is it an emergency? They go, no. I said, I don't want to hear it. Write it down. I do not want to hear it, because I'm trying to break them of the habit, because that's what it will take. You'll have to break them of just stopping them from interrupting you whenever they want to. Okay, so that happens. That's one thing that'll happen. Here's the next thing that'll happen. It'll be unbelievable how many solutions they will find on their own. 80% of your problems will be eliminated overnight. Overnight. when you do what I just told you, because they will now take it upon themselves to pay attention to the solution. Now, in the beginning, so that's going to be a main factor. Like when you start this 3 months later, you're going to have very few questions and problems because you're already going to be all these systems are going to be taking place, and they're already going to know what to do. Now, so that's a huge thing that happens. 80% of your problems will go away magically overnight when you do this. And what happens is they'll come up with the solution, or what will happen, they'll write it down, and then at the staff meeting they'll get the solution, and then it'll be a system again instead of, oh, let me just come in and interrupt you every time this happens. Well, that's not acceptable. Now, another amazing thing that happens in the beginning, when you first implement it, there'll be a lot of questions and problems. And what it'll do is it'll tell you as a manager what you're missing, what you did not train on, or what needs to be trained more on that they didn't get, that now there's a crack somewhere. So it will help to identify where the training needs to go. That's another great thing that'll happen in the beginning. But the biggest thing that'll happen is personal responsibility. They will now, after a few weeks of going through this and paying attention to the systems, they will now understand and be empowered to understand what the problem is and have the knowledge and ability to come up with the solution. And I'm telling you, 80% of your problems are going to go away. And then there's the last thing that happens. In the beginning, it sounds a little rough to the staff. But actually, when you start using, and this is so important that you start using their solutions. Because like I said, when they give you solutions, 80% of the time, they're going to give you the right solution because they're dealing with some intricacies that you may not know or be aware of. And so 80%, and here's what happens. It empowers your staff. That's what happens. And there's a lot to be said about staff that's empowered when they know that they can think on their own, they can act on their own, and they're not going to get yelled at, and they're not going to get fired, and they know, the parameters of what they need to do. So if you want to cut out 80% of your problems in 90 days, and it'll happen faster than that, do the legal pad solutions. And I'm telling you, in no time at all, you'll have accountability, solutions, a lot less problems. They won't be stopping you, and they won't be stopping other staff members left and right. And they will be empowered. And you'll also have your systems in place, and you'll know what needs more training and what doesn't. It is unbelievably an effective management tool.